what's up you guys, this is Rob from Gay Guy Plays, and today on the Quick Draw, tossing has just got a bit more infested when we take a look at the Cerata. Now as you know, I am a big fan of explosions and weapons with cool mechanics, thus a good old throwing weapon is right up my alley. And honestly, we've been due for one that sits on the higher end of the spectrum for a while now. So when the Cerata was teased as the new puncture glaive all the way back at 10 Live 2015, you know that my loins were just hungering for this one. Now, a little over 6 months later, we finally get our hands on this new toy. Now you can pick up the Cerata's blueprints in the infested lab of your clan dojo once you've completed the appropriate research. Just be aware that you do have to complete the Skoliak research as a prerequisite. However, for those of you who don't want to wait on the research just to be surprised with a really odd component cost, you can always pick this up in the market pre-built along with the weapon slot and a catalyst for 150 plat. Now the Cerata's primary melee damage type is Toxin, which is a fantastic element on its own as it bypasses shields and deals bonus damage to both corpus flesh and ferrite armor. However, it doesn't do so well against fossilized infested. In addition, it also combines well with other elements to create highly desired damage types like corrosive and radiation. But one thing you should keep in mind is that the thrown damage of the Cerata is actually IPS based, with its primary damage type being puncture with a small splash of impact and slash. Now, puncture is great against armor targets, however for higher end play, be sure to equip the appropriate elemental combo in order to deal the optimal amount of damage. Now, the Cerata is definitely an interesting beast. It shares the same base damage as the Glaive Prime, however its thrown damage sits at 150, while the Glaive Prime enjoys the highest base thrown damage at 170. Now, when it comes to supplemental stats, the Cerata actually beats out the Glaive Prime for status, crit chance, and crit multiplier. At 15%, its crit chance alongside its 2x crit multiplier places the Cerata right on the borderline for a potential crit and berserker build, which would be great if we were looking at a melee weapon. However, thrown weapons are a bit different. Now, while the Cerata wins out on standard support stats, it actually falls a bit short on the thrown end of the spectrum, as it has less flight speed than the Glaive Prime, and its base attack animation speed sits at 1.0, while the Glaive Prime sits at 1.17. What this basically means is that its thrown charge time is innately slower than the Glaive Prime's. In order to surpass a Glaive Prime equipped with Fury, you would need at least 2 stacks of Berserker, meaning that either you'll have to get lucky with a previous thrown shot, as with a max true steel you'll only have a 24% chance to crit, or do a little bit of meleeing in order to rack up the stacks. And let's face it, the base melee damage on this thing isn't the most impressive. In addition, getting and keeping Berserker stats is a tad bit harder if you're solely using the Cerata as a thrown weapon. Frankly, it's also a bit rough to mod as the power throw quick return combination already eats up 2 of your slots, while base damage and your elemental combo will take up a lot of the rest. Now, don't get me wrong, as thrown weapons go, this is definitely one of the more solid ones. However, it's just got a lot of extraneous stats that are very tempting to mod for. Now, speaking of extraneous, can we talk? Okay, so let's be real here. While the critical bonuses are fairly decent on this weapon, thrown weapons really get their damage boost via explosive potential, so the extras are nice, but not quite game-changing. Honestly, it's kind of like handing a gay guy a double-ended dildo. Realistically, you're only gonna need one end, and even if he happens to bring a friend around to play along, you'll now have doubled the amount of innate penises, and when slotted into a standard penis to orifice configuration, there will honestly only be one hole left to plug. So at the end of the day, you're still only gonna be using one end. Because let's face it, if you decide to try and tackle a hybrid crit throwing build, you're just gonna end up with shit on both ends. But what you do with your toys is completely up to you, so let's get back to the quick draw. All in all, the Cerata isn't half bad, it's just a bit of a tease as there's no way to optimize a build where you can have your cake and eat it too. Thrown weapons require one set of mods, while a crit build requires another. Personally, while it can be tempting to try and mod for both, I would suggest focusing on one aspect of the build and splashing in a little of the other. Regardless, it does come with a V and a D slot for you to play around with your build. That said, whether you prefer to stick it or like to do a bit of tossing, the Cerata's got you covered on both ends. So thank you all for watching another episode of The Quick Draw. If you haven't already caught it, be sure to check out my previous episode on the recently revamped Ignis, as well as the Basiloc. Now, don't forget to do the thing that I ask you to do at the end of every one of these, and as always, stay tuned for more sex toys that are just plain extra, here at A Gay Guy Plays. Okay, so instead of the normal fun stuff, here's a little bit of a flight speed test. Note that even though the animations are offset, the Glaive leaves their hand at the exact same time, yet the Glaive Prime returns a little bit faster.